One unexpected sentence from Caitriona Balfe was all it took to make Stephen Colbert visibly blush on live television, and suddenly, the real story behind Outlander's intimate scenes became impossible to ignore. What unfolded that night was something no one in the studio was prepared for. Caitriona didn't deflect the question, soften her answer, or hide behind humor. Instead, she leaned forward, measured her words, and delivered a level of honesty so disarming that even Colbert, a host known for commanding every room he enters, briefly lost control of the moment. The audience laughed, but not because it was funny. They laughed because they were stunned. In that instant, a polished late-night interview cracked open into something far more raw and revealing. Caitriona wasn't chasing headlines or exposing scandal. Yet what she shared landed harder than any tabloid rumor ever could. She spoke about Outlander's sex scenes not as fantasy or romance, but as labor, precise, demanding, and emotionally exhausting. As Colbert shifted in his chair, the contrast became almost surreal, bright studio lights colliding with a conversation that stripped away years of illusion. Caitriona explained that nothing about those scenes is spontaneous, no matter how intimate they appear on screen. Every movement, every breath, every frame is planned long before the cameras roll. The seductive mythology fans had embraced for years unraveled in real time. Colbert laughed again, this time nervously, realizing that a cherished fantasy had just been dismantled in front of millions of viewers. What made the moment electric wasn't sexuality, it was control. Caitriona spoke calmly and clearly about boundaries, consent, and trust, leaving no room for misinterpretation. These scenes exist, she emphasized, only because everyone involved agrees, communicates, and actively protects one another. In an industry still reckoning with its past, her words felt quietly radical. The audience sensed it too, leaning forward as the conversation slipped beyond entertainment into something far more uncomfortable, and far more honest. She acknowledged how fans dissect every glance and gesture, but admitted that none of that exists for her on set. Social media disappears. Speculation fades. What remains is choreography, professionalism, and endurance. Through her perspective, Outlander, long praised for its intimacy, suddenly looked different. Less romantic, more disciplined, more draining. Colbert's blush became symbolic, a physical reaction to a truth rarely spoken aloud. By the time the laughter died down, one thing was clear. This wasn't just a funny late-night exchange. It was a collision between fantasy and reality, between what audiences consume and what actors endure. Caitriona Balfe didn't just make Stephen Colbert blush, she forced everyone watching to rethink what those Outlander scenes truly represent. No one that night expected a single sentence to momentarily unseat a host famous for his composure. Colbert laughed awkwardly, lost his footing just long enough for the room to erupt, then struggled to regain control. But what stunned viewers most wasn't his reaction, it was Caitriona's unfiltered truth. Calm, direct, unembellished, a truth that shattered assumptions about how intimacy is constructed for television. Caitriona has never chased shock value. She speaks with intelligence and restraint, carefully guarding the line between her private life and her public work. That's precisely why her candor felt so destabilizing. She didn't describe those scenes provocatively. She described them as serious work, requiring absolute trust and immense emotional discipline. And that honesty made the conversation more charged than anything suggestive ever could. She explained that before cameras roll, everything is meticulously planned, angles, hand placement, lighting, even breathing. There is no impulse, no improvisation, only safety and respect. As she laid this out so plainly, Colbert's uneasy laughter signaled a realization many viewers were having at the same time: the fantasy had collapsed. What made the moment unforgettable wasn't that Caitriona talked about sex. It was that she talked about autonomy. She made it clear that neither she nor Sam Heughan is ever pushed beyond personal boundaries. Every scene is discussed, every concern is heard, and at any moment, they have the right to stop. Delivered without anger or theatrics, her words carried undeniable weight. The audience laughed again, not mockingly, but in disbelief. Behind the polished images on screen lies a process that is rigid, tense, and emotionally draining. Caitriona didn't glamorize it, nor did she frame herself as a victim. She described it like work, intense, vulnerable, and demanding professionalism at every level. Colbert blushed not because the topic was explicit, but because the truth was so direct. In that moment, late-night comedy collided with a serious conversation about agency and control in the entertainment industry. Caitriona wasn't lecturing or posturing. Yet her message was unmistakable. Intimate scenes are labor, and they deserve respect. She also addressed audience reactions, admitting she knows fans analyze every detail. But on set, that world disappears. Her focus is simple: complete the scene safely and truthfully. That boundary, she said, is non-negotiable, even knowing those moments will be endlessly replayed and dissected once they air. Outlander has long been praised for its sensuality, but few viewers understand the negotiation, fatigue, and emotional strain behind those scenes. Caitriona revealed that some days she left set drained, not from embarrassment, but from the sheer energy required to give so much of herself. Colbert tried to ease the tension with jokes, but it became clear Caitriona wasn't there to entertain with scandal. She was telling a real story, and that authenticity is why the clip spread so quickly online. Many viewers came away realizing those scenes aren't just marketing tools, but carefully constructed narrative choices shaped through a female perspective. Caitriona emphasized how deeply she cares about framing, intention, and emotional honesty, and why she has never hesitated to say no when something feels wrong. The moment that made Colbert blush ultimately made audiences think. It raised uncomfortable questions about power, control, and how intimacy is consumed on screen. Caitriona offered no grand conclusions, her lived experience was enough. As the interview wrapped, she smiled calmly, without regret. Colbert joked it was one of the sweatiest interviews he'd ever hosted, drawing one final laugh. But when the laughter faded, one truth remained: Outlander's intimate scenes are built not on fantasy, but on trust, negotiation, and boundaries. Caitriona Balfe didn't just embarrass a late-night host. She changed how audiences see what they thought they already understood. And that's why the moment was so powerful, not because it was provocative, but because it was real.